Army and the rest of the Navy. Submariners, I don't know in World War II if they did, but when I was in, they got a ration and a half. And so they got 50% more money to spend on their food than the other guys. And so they figure if you're going to be out there by yourself in that big ocean, you better keep them happy and keep them fed. And we usually had good food. The only problem is that if you're on a long patrol, you quickly ran out of fresh eggs and vegetables and stuff like that. And toward the end of the patrol, the food wasn't that great, but you just had to eat what was available.
Hang on just a second.
Okay. This next room is going to be really interesting. It's called the control room.
Any other questions?
This is a battle lantern. And you know when Grandpa makes a picture of margaritas and I hit the diving alarm? Here's where you hear it coming out of here on the real submarine. They got one of these in each compartment, and it comes on real loud. It's pretty important to know when you're going to dive and when you're going to surface. And so it's loud so it gets your attention. And they also use that for other emergencies like a collision alarm or repel boarders. Any kind of an emergency, they'll send an alarm signal out, and you know immediately just by the sound of the alarm what the problem is. Fire, collision, whatever. Ah. Whoa!
Oh, come on, that hasn't been that long.
Yeah, it's been 57 years is a long time.
So you on a fleet boat, Mac?
Yeah.
Which one?
Madrigal, 480.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Move them around there. There you go. This
All
one.
right, kids.
Around there, buds. Get over there where they drive the boat.
I got the person that's going to do that. Larry.
You got it.
This is the heart and soul of the control of the boat.
Who else you want?
Now,
Larry, when do you want me to do it? When do you want me to do it?
Wait till I'll get in.
Okay.
I got the
There's more.
person- I got the person that's going to do it.
All right,
Back into here.
we got it.
If it's a little person that's gonna be scared the first time it makes a noise.
What's happening?
That's all right.
You gotta make sure he holds it.
Oh, the diving
Is
alarm?
that everybody?
Okay, ready?
You want to sound the diving alarm?
Hey,
Rose.
Rose?
You want to
Must-
sound the diving alarm?
You want to push the
it's
button?
noisy, it's noisy.
She,
I'm going to put you here.
Oh,
What's
man.
your name? Okay, come here.
Stand up here.
Oh my gosh. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, Rose, look at you.
Okay, watch your head. Stand straight up.
Oh my gosh.
See that
Now,
handle?
grab this.
That's gonna be
Hold on
noisy.
something.
Rose, it's gonna be
You're gonna
noisy.
Pull it. No, like this.
Pull it down.
Down.
Do it again.
One more. There you go.
dive,
Way
dive.
to go.
Good job, Rose.
Whoa.
Okay, when you hear that sound to dive, then a lot of things start happening. They
That's right.
start open up the vent valves on the ballast tanks. That lets the tanks open at the top and vent, and water comes in from the bottom, seawater, and fills it up. On the surface, this boat weighed like 1,560, 80 tons, and they would flood about 800 extra tons of water into the boat to make it sink. So you get it going down, and then the diving officer had to work with the people in this compartment that ideally you wanted to get it in neutral buoyancy, where it just is basically the same density as water, and then it moves through the water easier than if it's too heavy or if it's too light, because then you got to use extra energy to keep it on control. These big wheels over here, one is for the bow planes and one is for the stern planes. And when Grandpa was a lookout, I have to go up through there is the conning tower, and then you go on top of the boat where we came in and climb the side of that up to, there's shears up there where you'd be a lookout to watch for ships and aircraft. Now when they hit the diving alarm, You got to come down those 2 ladders down here, boom, hit this deck, and you go over, and one lookout takes the bow planes, and one takes the stern planes. And they're hydraulically operated, and they're still a little hard to turn, but on occasion you lose hydraulics, you'd have to try to...
When you lose electric,
Yeah,
you still have hydraulics because you go to manual.
Yeah,
Now you
you
got-
manual, and it's really a workout trying to get those things to turn. And you got gauges here that tells you the depth that you're at, and this manifold over here, now this is for blowing the tanks dry when you want to surface. You can see there's a lot of different valves here, and in a submarine, they're always moving water around one way or the other.
Water or air. What Mac was saying is there's 3 manifolds over there. You got a high pressure manifold, you got a low pressure manifold for ship service air, and you got a 10-pound manifold for blowing the air in the tanks. You know, when you surface, finish blowing the water out the bottom, rather than use high pressure air, hot air. Okay?
When that high pressure air especially starts going through the lines, you can just hear it rumbling, and the lines are... Now, one time when I was mess cooking, I was standing about where that gentleman is in the next compartment there, and we were diving, and we had a problem, and we had an emergency surface. And the cob, who's the chief of the boat, he yelled out, "Blow everything." And the auxiliaryman that was working this manifold, he was going down here hitting these valves like crazy, opening them up to blow the water out of the tank so the submarine would come back up. That particular time when that happened, for some reason the stern planes got locked on full dive and they couldn't break them loose, and we started going down at a real steep angle, and about as bad as some of those hills that you've skied when you're going when you go down below 15 or 20 degree angle, things start falling everywhere, and you got to get that corrected right away. And of course you got to remember you got all those batteries too, and you don't want to start sloshing around the electrolyte of those batteries all over the place. So there is a limit to how steep you can dive. You got to have it under control. Any questions? This gentleman knows everything about this. If you got any...
Over on this side, you got what they call a trim manifold, back in the corner there, and that's for moving water internal on the ship, on the boat, forward, aft, side to side, whatever. That was it. And the diving officer tells the manifold operator what he wants. Like he'll say, move 500 pounds from forward trim to after trim. He just looks at the gauge here. He starts pumping, he gets 500 pounds, he shuts it down. And then that trims the boat up. Also, when you dive this boat, these boats, like Matt said, when you dive these boats, and the chief of the watch pulls these levers, opens all the vent valves on the top of the tank, we got a negative tank that's full. And it's called negative because it gives you negative buoyancy. Soon as them tanks start venting, this thing goes down like a rock. It'll go from surface, on the surface, to 58 feet in less than 30 seconds. Back in the after battery compartment where the cook cooks, he's got a valve back there they call the main induction. It's a 36-inch valve. What this chief of the watch is waiting to hear from the auxiliaryman, that the main induction is shut and locked. And he looks here and makes sure he's got a green light. If he don't got a green light, he shuts all them vent valves and we start blowing immediately. Because that valve malfunctioned in 1939, I think it was, and the Squalus sunk, went to the bottom. Because 36 inches of water rushing down there floods a boat quick.
They call that the Christmas tree too. And when you get ready to dive, you got to have green board all the way across, and he'll report to the diving officer, green board, and that means all the external openings are secured and closed, all the hatches, everything, so that you're going to be under control. You're not going to be taking on water.
When you go to sea on this boat, you rig for dive. when you're going out, you got the maneuver and watch set. In the meantime, you're rigging the boat for dive. That's a rig for dive panel. And you check them off as the guys call in, they're rigged for dive. And an officer goes and checks every compartment. Now, everything's shut. Once they're shut and you're in that position, nobody can open them valves or do anything without permission from the con. They're the only ones that can do it. So there's only, when you're on the surface and running, if you're running on a diesel, okay, you're mainly on the surface or submerged. When you're running submerged, there's nothing open. Everything's closed. You're running on the battery. Now, if you go up, this boat don't have a snorkel, but probably the one you were going at it.
Yeah.
We had a snorkel so you could run the engines when you're submerged.
Didn't like it though.
So, yeah. And every time you took water over the head valve and it closed,
Diesel would draw vacuum.
pull the vacuum rapidly.
Yeah. Now, if you look down in here, we're not going to go down in here, but below here is the pump room, and that's where the auxiliarymen pretty much hung out. But there's all kinds of pumps and means of sending water where you want it, and it's just chock full of equipment with all kinds of valves. And part of the qualification, you had to go down there and learn all that stuff, whatever valves.
It's not a big place.
It's real tight.
It's got two huge Hardy Time air compressors, hydraulic pump, accumulator. You got a low pressure blower, big low pressure blower, the air conditioning and the refrigeration's down there. Some boats have a little lathe down there, some don't. And all that stuff's down in there. And the auxiliaryman, that's his job to make sure it's running. Because when you're on the way, he runs, after you use air, when you're on the way, he charges the tanks up. He starts the compressors, runs them in. Also, when you're on the way, you're always bleeding. There's always air being bled into the boat, and the pressure in the boat starts to go up. When the pressure goes up, you start an air charge, which means your tanks are going down. Start an air charge, you pull that down, and when you pull it down, you shut the air charge down. You keep on going, but you maintain your high pressure air. You got to maintain that because that's the only thing that's going to surface you.
Yep.
Your high pressure air.
Now, in the qualifications, and it usually takes 6 months of hard work to get it done. You got to learn all this stuff, and not only do you have to learn it, but all the systems, you have to draw diagrams of it. The hydraulic systems, the air systems, the pumping systems, and identify the valves and know where they are and what they do. So it's quite a learning experience, and but it's critically important because on a submarine like this, anytime there's any kind of an emergency or battle action or whatever, and they'll close the doors between compartments, and you're there until the captain secures from whatever the emergency or battle stations, and so you got to be able to perform wherever you are.
No matter who you are.
And you only got seconds to react on a lot of things, and a lot of the emergencies, it's a matter of seconds because the outside water pressure quickly builds up as you go deeper and deeper, and it could, if you had a bad leak, it can come in so fast into the submarine that it can compress the air in the submarine and make it hotter than hell in here. And actually, on the nuclear submarines, as deep as they go, the men could be cremated before they could do something about the problem. So time is of the essence.
Each other, didn't you? You depended on each other. Does
Oh
it
yeah,
say,
that's why you qualify.
That's why you keep having
It's a
reunions.
little bit different on nuclear boats. You just don't qualify everywhere.
What do we got here? Okay.
They don't want you in non-nuclear.
Boy,
Okay.
this is the radio room. You look in here, and here's how the submarine communicated with the base and got orders, and they got information about enemy targets that they were to seek out. And during World War II, when this type of submarine was being used, the American code breakers had actually broken the Japanese code. They were reading their codes. So the Japanese had send out a convoy, and they were required to report twice a day their exact location to their home base. And we were listening in on that, and we knew what it was. And we get what they called an ultra coming through and say such and such a convoy is going to be at these coordinates at such and such a time, and we'd send the subs there to try to sink them.
What do you mean?